Hi everyone, welcome to Season 2, Episode 3 of The Inside Job. This week's guest is a self-employed sports rehabilitation physiotherapist, Lawrence Fenton. Lawrence gives us advice about taking care of our bodies, as well as taking us through the process behind becoming a qualified clinician. And he describes the pros and cons of taking on the world of fitness as a self-employed professional. If you enjoy this content, then please show your support by liking, commenting, and subscribing on our YouTube page. Enjoy!
Hey guys, hey! It's Ayana here, and welcome to another episode of The Inside Job. Today, I am honored to have sports rehabilitation physiotherapist Lawrence Fenton. Lawrence is the founder of Rose and Rehab and has worked with many athletes to help mitigate injury. He is passionate about teaching others and has an obsession for understanding how the human body works. Please join me in welcoming my special guest today, Lawrence. He told me not to say Fenton again, but I just said it. How are you doing today, Lawrence?
I'm very good. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Thank you so much for being a part of the show. And in the beginning, I struggled with rehabilitation physiotherapist. Can you tell the audience what that title entails? What is that all about?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a sports rehabber or physio kind of specialises in, obviously depending on what they kind of go into, because you can specialise in different things. But I specialise in musculoskeletal injuries and trying to mitigate risk of injury. So it pretty much just means that I work with people who get injured, or that doesn't have to be the case. It can just be if you're looking to find ways to mitigate risk of injury within your sport, then I work with pretty much anyone just to make them better at their own body.
Wow. So what was the inspiration behind going into this field?
Yeah, I mean, I think that kind of stemmed from. I remember back in high school, I was trying to figure out what was I most interested in, based on the kind of subjects that we were learning, what we were doing. And I always found an interest in some of the theory side of like physical education, so PE and that kind of stuff. Even though looking back on it, it's kind of funny some of the stuff you learn, because you learn it at such a basic level. But that kind of started my interest, and then I would do my own kind of research into trying to understand a little bit more how the body works, and then that's when I found degrees like sport rehabilitation, and that's when I started looking into St. Mary's University, and I started looking into like how what do you kind of need in order to get into that uni and that kind of thing. So that pretty much just steamrolled my passion for that, and then I went into BTEC, and then that's pretty much how I got in and went from there pretty much. Yeah, that's pretty much how it started, I would say.
BTEC, what's BTEC?
Yeah, so BTEC, I did BTEC Sport, which is just extended diploma level 3, so it's like equivalent to 3 A levels. So I did that instead of A levels, and it was a much easier option than doing A levels based on all my friends doing A levels at the time, and I was there pretty much just chilling, doing coursework, and they were there stressing out about exams and that kind of stuff. So it was smooth sailing until I got to uni, and then it was pretty full on from there, pretty much. Yeah.
Now, what would you say is the most common public misconception about being a physiotherapist?
That's an interesting question, because obviously different people are going to have different perspectives, but the most kind of common thing I see is that people already have an expectation. Obviously this isn't everyone, but I feel like a lot of people already have this kind of expectation that they're going to get this quick fix, or that they just need to be out of pain. Whereas the interesting thing there is pain is quite a poor outcome measure. Like I wouldn't say to a client of mine, right now that you're pain free, off you go, like this is fine, because it's difficult to measure that as something to be objective, that they're improving. A upon, if that makes sense. Whereas we understand that pain comes from the brain and it doesn't equate to tissue damage. Like you can have people that have tissue damage and have no pain, and then you have people that are in chronic pain and they don't have any tissue damage. So it's not an indication of there being damage at the site, and that's because it comes from the brain. So it's all about how the brain is perceiving what you're doing. So that's why I always try to preach to people that you don't have to be in pain to work with me. And that's the interesting thing, is you don't have to have pain to have unhealthy tissue, to have unhealthy joints. So that's why I feel like it's always beneficial to work with someone that has your health as their best interest.
What advice or what steps are involved in becoming a physiotherapist?
Well, I mean, it's relatively straightforward. Obviously, it can differ. So it's interesting because I work with, or I've recently started working with a guy called Luke Summers on Instagram. He's Improve with Luke, and he didn't actually start off with a degree. He started with a massage level 5 degree. So I think that was just like a 1-year course or something. I'm not actually sure. And that's how he kind of entered the field. And obviously that gives you the essentially the right, and also to have insurance to go hands on with people. So from there he just started accruing like a bunch of courses, like short courses and that kind of stuff, to get certified in different things, and that's made him who he is today. But the usual route is you make sure you have the qualifications to get into uni, and it's usually a uni degree. Like you don't really have any apprenticeship options or anything like that. So it's usually you start off with a bachelor's, you do a 3-year degree, depending on what you do. I think you can go straight into becoming an osteopath, and I think that's a bit longer. I think that might be like a 4-year degree, 5. So it really depends what you kind of aim for.
And so once you get your degree, is that you're just ready to practice? You can just go out and do it with the right insurance? Obviously.
Yeah. I mean, within my degree, we did the massage part of it during first year. So you're already qualified as a massage therapist. So I can get a student insurance and I can massage people if I want to. Once you have the bachelor's, with my course you become a graduate sport rehabilitator, and you most likely will get insured by BASRAT. That's the governing body that kind of covered the course that I did at St Mary's. And then you just go from there. It's really up to you. I mean, the interesting thing is, obviously, given how we've kind of evolved and how we've entered the information age, it kind of allows me to take the route that I did, which was going self-employed, whereas I feel like a lot of the kind of people in my field or just on my course went down the route of, you either join a clinic or you join a club. So again, it really depends what you want to do afterwards, but that's usually how it goes.
Oh, awesome, man. Okay, so the next question is, on the Rules and Rehab Instagram page, you talk about cars and the importance of maintaining daily routine. For those of us who don't know what cars means, can you please tell us what it stands for, the benefits, and perhaps do a mini demonstration?
Yeah, absolutely. So CARS, I'll start off with this. CARS stands for Controlled Articular Rotations, which is a fancy way of saying that I move my joint around in its full global workspace. There's a number of reasons why we do CARS. Essentially, when you look at the joint itself, that deepest part of the tissue, where bone articulates with bone, where you have cartilage, where you have the joint capsule, you don't get a lot of blood flow, so it's very limited vascularity. So pretty much every joint in your body relies on movement in order to kind of go along that physiological process. So you need to move in order for the membrane to secrete the fluid which gives the joint its nutrients. And that's pretty much the number one thing that you need for joints. So controlled articular rotations was invented for the sole purpose of expressing the full movement of a joint with control, with that intention in mind. Another good reason is because the way the brain works is it runs on efficiency and essentially survival, but that's why it runs on efficiency. So if you don't use it, you will lose lose it. That's just how it works. So that's why we do CARs on a daily basis. It's because we're constantly reminding our brain, hey, this is what my wrist does, this is what my hip is designed to do, this is what I want to keep, right? So that's essentially why I do it on a daily basis, and why it's beneficial. And I think another good reason for that daily practice is you're staying in tune with your body. So sometimes I'll do, like I'll train jiu-jitsu or something, and then the next day, like I go through shoulder CARs and I can feel how sore my shoulder is in different areas, and it's kind of like, oh, okay, like, that was from jiu-jitsu before, maybe I need to do a little bit more shoulder work, give that joint some extra loving, so to speak, from all the battering it took the day before from jiu-jitsu, right? Yeah, your experience of that, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. So that's pretty much why we do it. It's a really good way of trying to train the internal. And what I mean by that is obviously jiu-jitsu is external training, right? So following law of specificity, when you train jiu-jitsu, the sole thing is to make you better at jiu-jitsu. It's not to make your body better. Yeah. But when you do this type of practice, when you focus on trying to make joints better and trying to make stuff stronger, you're essentially working your internal structures to then benefit whatever you use those structures for, like the external training.
Okay, so I am a visual learner, so I'm still trying to get half of what he said.
Right, yeah.
So I saw on your Instagram page, it almost looked like you were doing the river dance or something. Okay. I saw you doing the car movements on that Instagram page. So can you show?
Yeah, I'll demonstrate. I think wrist will be a good one given the space and that kind of stuff and on camera. But it's essentially just the form of trying to express neurological control of the full range of motion. And it's harder than it looks. Like, it looks quite simple because I'm just moving my hand around when I do wrist CARs, for example. But with the wrist, you have 4 main movements. So you have your flexion, extension, and then you have your deviation. So you've got ulnar side, which you have a lot more range than you do radial side. Yeah. Okay, and that's just because of the bony anatomy there that stop you from going. So the way that I like to kind of teach wrist CARs is, if you imagine that the 4 movements I just showed you is like your north, west, south, east. So rather than you just jumping from north, west, south, east, I want you to think about the circle that encompasses those movements. You're actually going to try and do it in a fluid circle motion, and we usually do this like 1 mile per hour. So I like to just hold my forearm. We're going to start off by just bending on that pinky side. You're then going to extend coming down nice and controlled. You're going to bend onto the thumb side in this extension, and then you're going to flex, so bending the wrist coming up in the thumb side. Then from here we can go back, so we can bend on the thumb side, extend coming down, bend on the pinky side, bend coming up. Now for someone like
stiff.
Yeah, so if you
you
can feel a lot of stuff working, right? And that was just like 1 rep each way.
So I have a question. Sorry, Kate. So I spend a lot of time on the computer. I'm always typing. So would this exercise be beneficial for somebody that's always on the computer?
Yeah, 100%. Because if you think about it, and I try to look at this from an evolutionary biological perspective, the way we have evolved, and now that we spend a lot of time being sedentary, and we're not moving our joints as much, eventually, if you just sit down at a desk like this all day, eventually, I mean, if this is all you did 24/7, then that's all you're going to have according to your brain. So the reason why people develop this kind of posture when they're there is because that is what's optimal for what they're doing. It's not necessarily a strength issue, it's more a neural drive issue. Like, your brain is not thinking for these muscles to hold back, because eventually that's just inefficient, because what you're doing is this position. So this is what's optimal for what you're doing. Which is why your best posture is your next posture. Like, you need to be moving your joints.
Best posture is your next. What does that mean?
So rather than being overly concerned about what your static posture is, like how your shoulders are, how you kind of stand, it's better to focus on how well do these joints move. So yes, my shoulders are rounded, but can I move my shoulder through its full range very well? Do I have good rotational capacity in the joint? Can I move my scapula around with good control? You know, these kind of things. And the rotational aspect is what's interesting, because at the end of the day, the kind of general rule when it comes to joints is all of your joints excluding the spine, you want to focus on the rotational deficiencies first before the linear. So what I mean by that is I'll give the shoulder an example. The shoulder is a ball and socket joint. So you get the head of the humerus joined onto the glenoid of the scapula, right? So that should be able to articulate on the scapula independently without the scapula having to do excessive movement. So in order for me to expand the space in the joint, I have to first be able to rotate in order to then, you know, move on to anything else. Not necessarily like that, but you want to build rotational capacity, because that has an effect, the biggest effect, on the space that you then have, and that will translate to any of the linear kind of movements that you then do, because you then have more space in that joint. The way we usually measure that is through passive range of motion. So I would get you to relax and I would move your joint, and then that would give me a feel of how much space you have in that kind of joint capsule. When you add active component to it, so when I get you to do it yourself, that's more of a demonstration of what kind of neurological awareness control you have, how much range of motion you can do actively, so how, like, I guess, kind of strong you are within that range. And then that's where it gets a bit interesting, because then you look at the differences, someone's difference between their active and passive range, and you know, those kind of things.
Okay. Well, my bones, when I go down, it kind of cracks a little. I don't think I'm that old yet, but maybe.
She says a little, it's like a gunshot.
You know, it's not a gunshot. When I try to do the squats, I'll do it, and I come back up and it just. And so I'm worried. Maybe I need to do some more exercise.
Some cars.
Yeah, you know what it is? It's during the quarantine, so I'm trying to.
Yeah.
It's always easier to blame everything on the quarantine.
Of course, definitely.
Yeah, so I've noticed that. So I started doing, like, taking the steps for work. It's about 9 flights up.
Okay.
So I make a conscious effort to start taking it so that I don't hear that crack, because it makes me nervous.
Okay, yeah.
You know.
I mean, this is the interesting thing when it comes to rehab as well, because thought processes are a huge factor. And what you think can definitely alter the pain that you experience, or the discomfort that you experience. If you're getting kind of clicking, cracking in joints, that's very normal. We call that joint crepitus. So a good way of explaining that, I think, is it's like negative air pressure. So, you know, if you get a fresh jar of jam, you open it, it goes pop. That's pretty much what it is.
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, and that's the same thing. Like if you go to a chiropractor and you get adjusted, you're not getting realigned. They're not resetting anything. They're just popping that negative air pressure, which kind of gives you releases that kind of analgesic effect and makes you feel better. And it can also be quite beneficial when you actually couple that with specific input, so exercise. Because you kind of get this, when you get this analgesic effect, it's kind of a good way to trick the nervous system. Because at the end of the day, the reason why you're tight, you're in pain, you have stiffness, is because the brain is making that there. Like if you're getting tightness from training, it's pretty much the brain saying, okay, I don't want you to move now, or perhaps how you were training was not optimal for that area, or whatever it may be. There's a lot of factors involved with that. So a lot of the time when people kind of just stretch it out or foam roll it out or massage it out, it's kind of like putting a band-aid on the problem. Like you're not really trying to find out why there's tightness or why there's pain. You're just kind of, you know, passive input is going to get you a passive result at the end of the day. It's not going to lead to tissue adaptation. When you combine the two, then you can get some very beneficial results, because you can take advantage of the short-term effects that you get from the passive stuff, i.e. Massage, foam rolling, that kind of stuff, and then you can kind of use that to then get specific.
You say massaging helps if you get massages?
I mean, it really depends. I'm kind of saying it's not necessarily something that's not going to help.
I'm just trying to tell him.
She's
I'm
constantly trying to get massage.
I'm just trying to hint to him that, you see.
There's the trick.
He said that. I I'm just tricking your brain if I do it, so it's not the best thing.
Yeah, it can
You're
it's
better off doing stuff
definitely
yourself.
yeah, it's definitely beneficial within the right context. But if you go see a medical professional and that's the only thing they do, like they're kind of not really addressing why there's pain or tightness in the first place. They're not really focusing on how to make you better at moving or how to make you stronger where you're weak. And kind of addressing your history or why that kind of stuff is there if they're only doing treatment. And the only thing I don't like about that, and that's kind of why since as soon as I went self-employed, I kind of had this mindset of instilling self-efficacy into everyone that I work with, is because at the end of the day it's about what you do, which is what's going to create change. Like, you might see me 1 hour in a week, but what are you going to do with the other 167 hours or whatever it is? Because as far as your nervous system is concerned, as far as your brain is concerned, your training starts as soon as you wake up and it stops as soon as you go to sleep, right? It doesn't care about you sitting at a desk and then you want to blast a 45-minute hit section. It doesn't care about any of that stuff. It's going to take the information that it gets in and it's going to make decisions based on that. So that's pretty much how. I mean, there you go.
That's how it sounds. Exactly.
So that's just negative air pressure. It's not an issue. It's not an issue at all.
So
unless there's pain, of course. If you have pain with the cracking, then that's something you want to investigate.
As a question, then I just thought about when you were talking about posture and stuff like that. What's your opinion then on I think it was like George Masvidal, right? When he was training in the build up to his fight against Usman, yeah, he had it was almost like a brace, right? I think you might have seen them before, like it's just basically like strapped across his chest or across his back, right? And there's something to do with like forcing your body into like a better posture. So he was using it like for his striking, I guess.
That's interesting. I didn't see that.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you knew anything about that or.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't actually know anything about that specifically, or what they would claim that it helps with. So I can't really say much in regards to what they're saying. All I do know is that the scientific literature behind poor posture leading to pain, dysfunction, etc. is very poor. So we can't really say, the reason why you have neck pain is because of your forward head carriage, or the reason why you have shoulder pain is because of your rounded shoulders. Like, it's not as simple as that. It's even not as simple as saying, you have shoulder pain, you have a rotator cuff tear, that's why you have shoulder pain. It's like, not really. It's more the brain is perceiving that as a threat, hence because you have people that can have rotator cuff tears and have no pain.
Yeah, because that's the funny thing. I was thinking that the whole time you were saying it, was that, like, I've never had, like, having torn my rotator cuff, it hurt, like, in the moment, but then, like, very shortly after, it was just like a numbness, like, I would get like a numbness down my side and things like that.
Yeah.
But even for a long time after, the reason I kept kind of re-injuring it, I guess it wasn't so much re-injuring it as just maybe setting myself back, because obviously, like you said, it's always there, but I wasn't feeling the pain. So I'd be like, yeah, I'm good, I'd feel really good, and then I'd do something, like I'd move my arm in a certain way, like maybe, like you said, out of that comfortable range of motion, and that's when, like, it would be like, like, something's not right, I think that was one of the biggest problems that I had with my shoulder for so long, was that I'd be fine. Like, I'd be doing everything with my shoulder and there wouldn't be a problem. And now I just do it, like, I'd reach for something, or
something awkward that will kind of offset.
You don't even think about it. And then all of a sudden, like, I'm in pain again.
I think the interesting thing with that is it kind of backs up my point from earlier a little bit, that pain is a poor outcome measure. The fact that there's a lack of pain now doesn't necessarily mean that the tissue's healed. And when you have tissue damage, like, depending on the severity, like the more severe cases where you get like most of the fibers are torn, it takes a long time for tissue to heal. Like, that's why you kind of have like where they kind of show you a a chart where it's like 3 months to a year, because that last phase of healing, or the last couple phases where you have repair and remodeling, just takes a long time. And in order to, I mean, they've shown this with research as well, as a good way to have an effect on the repair and remodeling of tissue is through what we call mechanotransduction, which is basically you load the tissue. So that's why rehab is training. Training is rehab at the end of the day. Like, you're trying to make shit stronger. Like, that's what we want to do. If you need to expand your range of motion, then we will do things that expand your range of motion. And as far as I'm concerned, mobility training is strength training. Like, when I get my athletes, like Jack, for example, coach at Elevate Gym, and with Bar Fight, he's a powerlifting athlete who was a former MMA fighter, and he has had limitations with his shoulder mobility, hip mobility, all this kind of stuff. And this is something that we work on. He knows fair well this is strength training. It's just a different kind of way of getting input than he would his normal powerlifting. You can do all the powerlifting in the world. It's going to make you better at powerlifting. It's not going to necessarily make your shoulder a better shoulder. It's not going to build your hip to be a better hip. It's going to make you have a better squat. But if I work on making your hip a better hip, that's going to translate to anything that you use that hip for. So you then go to squat with that hip, and because you now have a better hip, that's just going to equate to, whatever results you want to. That's the thing. It's quite difficult to measure that, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, they're always training on the side. So I can't say, oh, because you did this hip stuff, that's why you squatted that weight. But I can say that's why you're feeling less tight, or perhaps that's why you're getting less pain, because now it's less of an insult. And this is where prerequisites come in, right? So when I say prerequisite, it's, does that joint independently have the ability to move where you're asking it to move before you're asking for load? Does that make sense? So what I mean by a good example would be, if you don't have the ability to extend your wrist to 90 degrees, so you go to like here, but then you do a HIIT class, and they're asking all of you to do burpees and push-ups, and you're having to smash that with full body weight. That's added insult to that wrist joint, and it's not a surprise when you start to get pain there, because you don't even have the prerequisite of going there yourself, let alone loading your full body weight on it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Yeah, definitely.
So I mean, with the powerlifting perspective, a lot of that kind of comes down, and I think it's quite I don't want to say popular is not a good word, but common. It's quite common for powerlifters to get elbow pain, for example, or shoulder pain. And a lot of the time, what I find in my own experience, and of course this is why rehab is so individually based, because you have to assess the individual. It's usually always different. But a lot of the time, they get under the bar, they're asking for a lot of shoulder external rotation to get under that bar. And you go to assess some of these people and they have barely any shoulder external rotation. Well, it's like the force and the load is still going to travel through. Where's it going to go? Usually you look at joint below and above, and then they have their elbow that's taken abrupt for all of this because of the lack of the prerequisite that they have on the shoulder.
I remember getting quite worried. When we went to quite a few of the strength training sessions, and when we went on the bar, we were doing like the wide grip and the narrow grip. And for me, it was like I can't remember which way now, but when I took one of the grips, I was just like, no, I was too afraid to even do it, because I just felt like my arm was really in a place that I didn't want it to be with all that weight.
Was this post-injury as well?
Yeah, so this was maybe about 6 months ago.
It was weight pose. That's where that mental thing comes into play that you said, because I lifted more than he did. I did.
That is
you
not
know
true.
It's true.
That's not true.
Ask
I'm
Jack.
definitely not having that with
Ask Jack, our strength trainer. You heard it here. I did. He's right about the mental thing, because I just felt like I could conquer the world, and I lifted. What was it? How much was it? It was more than you, because I beat you. But anyway, we're gonna lighten things up a little bit, and we're gonna switch, and I'm gonna ask you a fun question. What's your favorite book or movie of all time, and why did it speak to you so much?
I'll definitely have to choose book, and that would be Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. Really good book. That was something that really opened my eyes to how stuff works and changed my mindset into understanding the difference between an emotionally based decision and a logically based decision, and how that kind of leads to the results that you want. Because at the end of the day, we can all say that we have goals and etc. But if you don't really have some sort of plan to achieve that goal, then it's just a wish, really. At the end of the day, like you've got to understand that, right, this is the work that needs to be done, and if you're not willing to do that, then how can you really expect the result that you want? So that was a book that was that really had an impact on how I viewed things, and it kind of opened my eyes a little bit that actually having like financial intelligence is a separate thing. Like I need to actually learn this as well in order to, and then you kind of get you understand that, wow, like there's a lot of stuff that you need to know that you don't learn in school.
For sure.
And this is why I'm happy that I grew up in the age of information where I can access a lot of stuff online, because that has really had an impact on how I learn, and my ability to even retain information and to keep expanding my knowledge is thanks to the information age. And that's a massive thing for me as a clinician, because that was probably the biggest disadvantage that I had, was not being around, at the moment, is not being around other clinicians, which is something that I don't like at all, because it's harder for me to be kept accountable, but also to right my wrongs, because I don't have someone else there that's smarter than me that can be like, no, I don't think you should do that, or whatever. So things like Instagram has allowed me to talk to people, like Hunter Fitness, Dr. Kickass, who's a doctor, great name. Yeah, I mean he's a jiu-jitsu black belt and a clinician as well, and I can message these guys and they chat back to me and they answer my questions, and that's super important for me. And then that has allowed me to get in touch with people like Dr. Ailish, who's one of my coaches / teachers, and then Luke, who's another now new coach of mine, who I pay them money because I want to spend time with them, so that I can better my understanding, not only for myself but for people that I work with. And that I need that. Especially someone who's self-employed. Even if I was employed with a clinic and I was around other clinicians, 100% I would still recommend going and doing that, because you just get a whole different perspective. And that's what's really important, is having this kind of thing where you're with coaches, people that are smarter than you, where you are held accountable, and you continue your learning process. Because at the end of the day, when I graduated, that was the height of my paranoia of, do I know enough to actually help people? Like, I was actually afraid, because at the time I was like, what do I do when someone who has this comes in, or what do I do when someone who has this comes in? And what I've learned since then is, you're not your MRI. Like, you can tell me you have arthritis and that kind of thing. It's like, okay, that's not going to dictate what you can and can't do. We're going to assess you, see where you're at, and then we're going to start to work to whatever goals that we set that we think you need, and build up from there. Because everyone is individual, and that's why I think it is, I wouldn't say dangerous, but I think it's important for people to understand that if you feel like you have knee pain, or you have a problem, don't just go on Instagram and see someone who's put knee rehab and follow that, because it's a waste of time. It wasn't designed for you. What you need is going to be different to somebody else. If they don't outline the individual that they're working with, their history, their pathology, exactly what they need, why they're doing this, then just move on. Don't even I don't even recommend looking at the post. The reason why that would be beneficial for me is because I get more of an insight in terms of how people rehab other people, and that might give me an idea of, okay, that could actually be a good exercise to achieve this within this context. And then if I work with someone where I see that could work, I might implement that. And then this is where it comes down to when people ask me, or I see people asking other people, like, oh, what's your favourite exercise, or what are the best exercise for shoulder, or whatever. And it's kind of like, there is none. All exercises can be amazing and terrible within the right and wrong context. It's all about what do you need as an individual, like what should you be focusing on. And I guess that's why cars was invented, because at the end of the day, we all have joints. If you're a Homo sapien, this is designed for you. So that's why I feel like that's kind of like a default, like everyone should be doing their cars at the end of the day.
Wow. Great answer.
Quite a
Somehow
lengthy answer.
cars came right back in again. And speaking of goals and setting goals, what is one dream that you have yet to accomplish, and what steps are you taking to get closer to it?
Quick answer, I would say for one thing would be jiu-jitsu black belt, obviously, and just keep training. Just keep training and learning is the best way to eventually achieve that. But yeah, 100% that is something that is a goal of mine. On top of that, being financially independent and I guess financially free is another goal, and that basically just means that I have sources of income that cover my living expenses. So if something falls through or anything happens, I don't have to worry that I can't pay for X, Y, and Z. And I do rehab and I do pardon me, and I do this business because I'm passionate about it and I'm obsessed, and I want to help people, and I really want to understand how this stuff works, and that's great and everything, but that's not going to guarantee that I'm going to be financially free. So that's why I understand that I don't just have to work my passion, which is what I am doing, but I have to find ways to invest in my passion as well.
That's good. That's good.
That's good.
And that's a great segue, actually, to our game. If you can pass those for me. Don't turn it over. Speaking of social media platforms and games, in season 2, we have a new game, and it's called Minding Your P's. Now, the premise of this game, it's very simple. Your 3 P's are your passion, your purpose, and your position. And you just spoke a lot about being passionate and purpose. So you're already in line, and it's quite simple. It's quite simple. I went on your social media platforms and pulled 5 to 6 photos.
Okay.
And you're just gonna blindly pick one photo.
Okay.
And just give me a quick background as to what's going on in the photo at that time.
Awesome.
And the photos, each of them are from different stages in your life. So it could be when you were a baby,
Oh God.
you were in college, whatever you have on social media. So it's nothing. Hopefully.
Okay, we'll see. I guess. Hopefully, I pick a good one.
And then just tell us where you were at that stage in your life in terms of minding your P's. If you were passionate about anything at that time, or if you had a purpose, knew what your purpose was, and in terms of your position, if at any. Alright, so it's simple. It's simple.
So I can't look.
It's fun. Just you won't see. You'll just pick one randomly.
Okay. Don't know. That's a good.
No, but I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Okay, nice. Shall I show it to the camera?
Yeah.
So hopefully they can see that.
It looks like
Right
you
there. So that
in
was
jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. So I got so that's a picture with me and Roger Gracie. So I got that was when I got my blue belt. So December 2018. Tommy promoted me to blue belt. Coach Tommy from Elevate Martial Arts and Strength Gym. That was a proud moment. I was very happy that day for sure. I feel like it's always a proud moment, when you get promoted to blue belt, and then it's just a matter of not quitting at blue belt, not being one of those people that get to blue belt and stops training. So yeah, that was nice.
So the blue belt, is that after the white belt?
Yes, yeah. So you start off at white belt. With jiu-jitsu, you have stripes. So you normally got the stripes when you get 4 stripes. Then technically your next promotion will be the belt above. So that pretty much works from the order is white, blue, purple, brown, black.
Oh, so you're halfway there. Well, almost.
Almost.
Purple.
Almost there.
So then
Purple's a bit more
purple
halfway.
is in the middle.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna ask you to blindly pick one more because there's one that I wanted you to pick. So just pick.
Is that
pick
the only
any,
option you're giving me?
pick anyone.
Right, awesome. Yeah, I'll
Pick
take this option
anyone
here.
and tell
Oh
us.
my god. It's actually okay. So this is like an embarrassing picture of me with a few friends during high school, which I'm happy that you picked out.
We're
for
not
sure.
here to embarrass you.
It's surprising like how drunk I was in this picture, even though I might not look it.
You look happy. You're
I
happy.
was very
drunk.
happy. Yeah, happy drunk for sure. I think I am quite a happy drunk. I don't drink much anymore. Like I haven't gotten drunk in ages. Like I can't remember the last time.
Me neither.
Sometimes I'll sip a cider or something just because it tastes good.
Him too.
But yeah, because I was so drunk and I can't really tell you much about that given situation, unfortunately. But yeah, I'm glad you picked this picture out. Yeah, it brings me back to
good
memory
times.
lane.
Well, they're all yours. All
Thank
5
you.
of them. No one takes pictures anymore. Everything is always
Oh
on
my
your
gosh.
phone. So
Oh wow.
yeah, I figure you have a little moment reminiscing on those moments.
That's hilarious.
Well, what's next for Roles in Rehab?
Just continue doing what I'm doing, keep growing, keep learning. That's the goal for sure. Keep trying to, impact as many people as I can in as much of a positive fashion as I can, I guess you could say. Yeah, that's my goal. I would love to eventually kind of get something online where I can start to impact people around the globe. But I feel like I need to take steps, I can't remember what the saying is, but it's kind of like own your own postcode before you own I don't know. But you kind of get what I mean. I want to grow my business in person and actually make sure that I have all that stuff down and do more due diligence before I start to try to transfer things online. Because of course when you go online it is obviously going to be a lot more restricted than seeing somebody in person. But I definitely think that's both a good opportunity to both be able to impact people, more people around the world, and also business wise that obviously makes sense. Yeah.
So where can they find you now? What's your Instagram?
So Instagram, Facebook, Roles in Rehab. That's where you can find me. LinkedIn, I can't remember if it's just my name, Lawrence Fenton, or if it's Roles in Rehab. Either one. But those are the places you can find me.
And you can see more of the car demonstration on his Instagram page at Roles and Rehab.
Yeah.
Lawrence, thank you so much for being a part of the Inside Job. Thank you so much for my co-host today. He's very big. Normally he's not in, but he's very excited when he heard that you'd be on the show, and he had some questions that he wanted to ask.
That's nice.
Which he did get to ask. So, and thank you all out there for continuing to watch and support and encourage us here in season 2. Remember, season 2 is all about minding your P's, so knowing your position, what you're passionate about, and following and walking into your purpose. As always, thank you for watching The Inside Job. Please, please, please remember to like, comment, subscribe, everything below. And if you haven't already subscribed, make sure you do so. If you have, then tell your family, your friends, your mother, your cat, your dog, everybody to watch The Inside Job and to subscribe and to comment and to like. Until next time, have a wonderful day or evening, depending on where you're watching from. Bye.